Some episodes may contain graphic content or sensitive topics, while all episodes will consistently feature offensive language and absurd speculations from two opinionated women on a spiritual journey just trying to figure shit out. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome. My name is Sharon, and I'm here with my lovely co-host, Heather.
Hi.
And we want to welcome you to Hexhaven. Well, should we dive into this topic here that we got today?
I am ready.
Okay.
I am ready. Should I take notes?
Yes, take notes. There will be a test at the end. It's not multiple choice. It's essay. So
oh, boy. I'm out.
Keep your thinking caps on.
This has been great. Thanks.
So today we are going to talk about Louisiana Voodoo. We recently covered it in a two-part episode, Haitian Voodoo.
Yeah.
And so Louisiana Voodoo is kind of a derivative of Haitian Voodoo because a lot of, with migration and slavery and stuff. So we'll dive into a lot of that stuff. I did find a little bit more about the voodoo dolls.
Oh,
so we'll talk a little bit about that. And I have some additional information about Marie Laveau that I did not know about when we covered her. So.
Oh.
All right. So Louisiana Voodoo is a religion and a magical tradition that draws upon Haitian Voodoo and Christianity, that has developed over time through generations of African slaves who were uprooted from their homes and cultural practices. With Haitian Voodoo, it's practiced in secret, with families blending their deities with the Christian saints or sometimes with angels in order to preserve their tradition. As far as like a categorization for the religion, it's categorized as an African American or Creole religion, and it is sometimes also referred to as Voodooism or New Orleans Voodoo in some of the older texts especially. Okay. Practitioners may be called voodooists or voodoos, depending on the region. But unlike organized religion, Louisiana Voodoo has no formal creed, and there's no sacred text and no unified hierarchical structure.
So they don't worship like a god?
No, they do.
Okay.
They do, but it's not like Catholicism where you got the Pope at the top, and then there's the bishops and,
Okay.
It's just... There's none of that within, the church and stuff like that.
Okay.
I did not find as much, with Vodou, I found a lot about priesthood. With Voodoo, no. It is way more secretive than with Vodou.
Really?
Sometimes it's interchanged, but it's also, you got to remember, it's it changes based on the group of people.
The culture.
Yeah, Yeah, but so the fact that it is blended elements of African spirituality and Catholicism kind of is exactly what allowed it to thrive in a Christian environment. Voodoo practitioners often venerate Catholic saints, associating them with African deities, highlighting the syncretic nature of this deeply rooted spiritual practice. The historical record on voodoo is really fragmented, as African American culture was not really a priority for much of American history, so they didn't really care to record it. But we'll just kind of go through a rundown of history and how this religion has kind of shaped throughout the centuries. So in 1699, French settlers arrived at Louisiana's shores, and the first enslaved Africans followed in 1719. The Spanish Empire took control from the French in 1763 and remained in power until 1803. During this period, the African population in New Orleans heavily descended from enslaved Congolese people who placed significant importance on ancestral spirits, similar to Haitian Voodoo traditions. Families within the slave community were often split up when they got to Louisiana, with children frequently sold away from their parents to other plantation owners. However, the French Code of 1724 officially recognized family groups in the slave trade and prohibited the sale of children under the age of 14 away from their parents.
14.
14! Jesus. The high mortality rate, though, amongst the slave community did foster a sense of solidarity and understanding amongst the survivors.
Okay.
Which, I understand. They had to stick to their, to themselves because...
For sure.
Other people treated them like fucking dog shit.
Right. Yeah. It's awful.
But luckily, it sounds like that's kind of exactly how this tradition was able to survive. So, that's good. Anglo-Americans white people.
Yes, Anglo. I know that. White people.
Fucking white people. Unfamiliar with African traditions, they viewed voodoo as exotic and a primitive superstition. Nevertheless, the isolated socialization of the slave population was likely the very thing that allowed their African traditions and practices to survive. The practice of voodoo was first recorded in the 1730s when Antoine Simon Lepage du Prat wrote about the use of grease amulets. Do you remember what those are?
Oh, I do remember you talking about them.
So they're like healing amulet. But it sounded like they could also be used for like poisoning, you know.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I don't actually know. As I think grease. I know they do have amulets that can be used for poisoning, but I think grease was specific for healing.
Oh, maybe. I do remember you talking about them, but I don't remember their exact usage.
Yeah. Yeah, so this dude with his very French long name, he wrote about the use of grease amulets in the 1730s. Then in 1803, the United States finally takes control of Louisiana through the Louisiana Purchase.
So the grease was believed to protect the wearer from evil or bring them luck.
Okay. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yep.
That's right. So back in the 1800s, which we know kind of from the Marie Laveau episode, free women of color dominated voodoo leadership. They made a living. Hell yeah, as they fucking should.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Making a living by creating and selling grease and other amulets for various purposes, from curing ailments to cursing enemies. Free people of color had specific rights that slaves did not, such as owning property, making a living, and getting an education. This threatened the foundational ideologies of both patriarchy and white supremacy. So I found this article, and it was kind of like a compilation of different newspaper articles from the 1800s. I think the majority of the articles were about like gatherings that they would hold at Lake Pontchartrain.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But so I wanted to read you just a couple of snippets.
Were the articles like in a newspaper?
Yeah. So this is from JSTOR.
Okay.
So I just wanted to read you a couple of things out of here so that you could see like how rife with white supremacy the times really fucking were.
Oh, great. I can't wait to hear this.
It says the New Orleans Republican advised readers that the voodoo stories presented in the conservative Democratic press, which isn't that interesting, but we already knew that the Democrats were the racist ones in the beginning. Not saying that there aren't still racist Democrats, but you know.
Right.
The political parties were much, much different.
Sure.
The New Orleans Republican advised readers that the voodoo stories presented in the conservative Democratic press were intentionally distorted and in order to present a demeaning picture of the newly freed black. And one exciting and representative account, although of questionable veracity, described St. John's Eve voodoo ceremonies, appeared in a letter to the New Orleans Times on June 28, 1872. This story agreed in certain details with the newspaper's own report of June 26. The correspondent, who spoke gumbo French, had learned the secret location of the real festival from a faithful old voodoo.
What?
Yeah, so he's saying that in the mainstream media, I guess they were really disappointed because they were expecting these spectacular, outlandish, exotic ceremonies, and it was just a bunch of people hanging out by the lake just cooking food and dancing around the fire.
Okay.
And so this guy is saying that he found the location of the real ceremony.
Oh.
Yeah.
So what's gumbo French?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Gumbo French.
Yeah.
I have never heard that term.
No, I have not either.
I know what gumbo is.
Me too. I'm hungry. I mean...
So he says, near the spot where the bayou meet Lake Pontchartrain, about 300 people, including Marie Laveau, the voodoo queen, had set up a cauldron. Into it were placed water, black pepper, a snake cut into 3 pieces, a cat whose throat Marie Laveau personally slit, and a live black rooster. All the while singing and chanting filled the air. Then everyone just disrobed while Marie Laveau put powders into the pot and conducted secret rites. At 12 o'clock, all hands raced into the lake. Later, there was more singing, dancing, eating, drinking, and recreation in the bushes. The ceremony closed with a sermon by Marie Laveau and a prayer of benediction.
Okay, wait. So the author of this article is claiming that they stumbled upon...
No, not the author of this article. He's claiming that somebody wrote into the New Orleans Times.
And they
infiltrated... that they infiltrated this voodoo ceremony.
I don't believe that. Do
Yeah.
you believe that?
Not at all.
I don't believe that. And here's the thing is, like, it was a secret society. So you're telling me you went to the only public park that was designated for African Americans, and you guys cut up a snake and slit an animal's throat, and then you danced around nude?
Yeah. So
No.
it seems like he's kind of trying to paint, like, Marie Laveau in, like, this evil picture.
Yeah,
you
for
know?
sure.
Which is not surprising.
Yeah, it's not
Unfortunately.
surprising.
But here is another portion that I thought was kind of interesting.
And this
along
is
this
someone
lines.
that wrote in about the same situation?
Okay, so it's about the same festival. It's the St.
Okay.
John's Eve Festival.
Okay.
And it's always, I think even today, held at Lake Pontchartrain.
Okay. However you want to say it is
Yeah.
fine with me.
Okay.
Lake Ponchy from right now on. I
Yeah.
don't really care.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So this is a reporter from the New Orleans Times who wrote on June 25th of 1873. He's talking about on the train rides that would carry people back and forth from the lake. He said that on those train rides, you could find as nondescript an assortment of humanity as we have ever taken stock in.
What the fuck?
Yeah. The most ardent defender of civil rights and social equality, were he white or black, would have blushed to have witnessed the many touchings and affectionate illustrations of his pet theories. Fully 1/2 of the passengers were Negroes, and of these 2/3 were females of the lowest order.
Fuck you.
Once under the way, the sports commenced, and for 1/2 hour the car in which we were seated gave forth sounds, and in the uncertain glimmer of the lamps displayed phantasmagorial changes that would have done credit to the lower regions. Interchanges of sentiment were perhaps more honest than refined. So he's basically saying, I know in the old-timey speak it was a little bit kind
He's basically saying they were wild as
Yeah,
fuck
he's
on
saying
that
that-
train, right?
Yeah, he's trying to say that it was just a bunch of black dudes having sex with hookers, pretty much. Like women of the lowest order.
But these are still enslaved black people, correct?
Yeah.
So I have a really hard time.
Wait, no, not.
No?
Yes. Yeah.
I just have a really...
And free people of color.
And free people of color. So maybe the free people of color, but I have a really hard time that thinking they would behave like that, because what if there were repercussions?
Right.
I just feel like I don't know.
So, and the thing was, too, is I think possibly by this time, because this is, so we're talking 1875, I said? 1873. So Marie Laveau is now an old woman.
Okay.
So things are definitely different, I guess, than they were back when she was first born. But, I mean, people have kind of fantasized, for lack of a better word, about this religion. So, like, I think they're kind of in their head.
Oh, yeah,
like,
absolutely.
You know, it just expecting more to happen than actually does, and when it doesn't, they have to come up with shit,
right?
You know, in order to fit like their agenda.
Yeah, for sure. And be like, beware on this day, don't ride the train now.
But there was white people too, like especially towards the later half of the 1800s. There was a lot, mostly white women were a part of it, but like in here. It says, whiskey flowed freely as white men and colored women interacted in typical New Orleans fashion. Often the blacks on the train sang and chanted all the way to Muhlenberg. There was present at Muhlenberg as many lookers-on as true believers. Estimates of the hopeful spectators ranged up to 12,000 in 1874. Everyone, including reporters, was out to have a good time, so the bars did a booming business, and the crowd was quite boisterous. Frail ones, or females with reputations not altogether stainless, were present in force. So that's what they used to call hookers, I assume?
Frail ones? Frail to me is like an elderly person.
Yeah.
Not a hooker, but now you're calling them frail too?
Yeah, because he says females with reputations not together stainless.
Unbelievable.
But he also says, as well as a numerous crowd of well-known gentlemen from the city. And it says they go out of curiosity and admiration of certain little yellow amendments of the Constitution. Do you have any clue what that could mean?
No. Little yellow amendments?
Yep.
I don't know. But notice he refers to them as gentlemen.
Yeah. Well-known gentlemen from the city.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it says, like, a bunch of dudes fucking wanted to go down to the black part of town
To get their
to get his
whistle
rocks
wet.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. Get your whistle wet.
Fucking
But
crazy.
they're gentlemen, aren't they?
Yeah. Always. In the early 19th century, the newspapers were pushing rhetoric against voodoo practice. In fact, there were 50 women, both white and black, that were arrested at a voodoo dance ceremony, and the papers reported the confiscation of nonsensical paraphernalia.
Nonsensical.
Yeah, I'm assuming, like, I mean, you know, like, voodoo altars are similar to, like, voodoo, so it's like they have statues and food and like paintings and stuff like that. So I'm sure. And then I know with voodoo, like they have all the amulets and stuff. So stuff like that probably.
Okay.
The Union Army attempted to suppress voodoo practice during the Civil War as well. In 1863, a large group of women were arrested again on Maria Street. I believe that's how you say it, but I did not look it up. For performing a dance ceremony, and I have like an actual interview with the detective.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. It was in the newspaper?
It was.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
Okay, so this is an interview with Special Officer Long, and he was investigating the suspicious meeting on Maria Street.
Oh boy. Okay.
So he says, me and some other officers entered the building and found about 40 naked women, all colored except two, who were dancing the voodoo dance and performing rites and incantations pertaining to the ancient African superstition Yelept voodooism. I'm not sure what Yelept means. It's Y-E-L-E-P-T.
Okay.
Yelept. In the center of the room, there was a vessel filled with a motley mixture of a semi-fluid character, ornamented with curious, unnameable substances. From the vessel, a number of burning candles protruded, and around these, lights the voodoo sisters dance. On a little furnace in the corner of the room, strange spices burned, giving forth exhilarating perfumes, probably incense. The object of the meeting, as far as could be ascertained by the police, was the bringing down of heaven's vengeance on those who had in any manner forfeited their goodwill. As soon as the police entered, there was a great scattering of the nude sisterhood, notwithstanding which about 20 were arrested.
Run!
It's the cops! Man, that reminds me of a lot of house parties I went to when I was a kid.
Babo!
Yeah. You got the lookout out the front window, like, everybody fucking scatter! Yeah, but so I thought that was interesting. Like, I read about this on some article, and then I read this one where it had all the newspaper clippings, and I was like, no fucking shit, that's the same fucking street, same year, that's what it is.
Right.
So
that's
I guess
wild.
I shouldn't say that it for sure is, but I am assuming that is the same one that they're referring to. So now we're going to go to the 70s. By the 1870s, white nationalist writers expressed concern about voodoo rituals leading to interactions between white women and black men. Ooh.
Oh, for Christ's sakes.
Yeah. Meanwhile, they were finding ways to profit by taking advantage. Voodoo was weaponized by white elitists to claim African inferiority and bolster segregation beliefs. There is an article in this Blake Touchstone paper where they talk about, like, some opportunists coming in, and during the St. John's Eve festivals, they would set up basically a brothel and got a special contract from the police force, and the police force would act as security.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah, so while they're trying to claim that voodoo makes black people inferior.
Right.
They're profiting from it. Yeah.
Of course.
Fucking gross.
It's the true gentlemen that are profiting off it, I
yeah.
guarantee.
Yes, exactly. Mm-hmm. And then in the 20th century, voodoo as an organized religion was suppressed both legally and by manipulating public perceptions through media, which is something we see all the fucking time, even today.
Yeah.
The Protestant elite imposed regulations restricting hoodoo doctor services, leading to arrests and convictions of many hoodoo doctors. In the late 1930s and early 1940s, we saw the first real attempts to document and explore voodoo culture. The Louisiana Writers Project financed a study interviewing 70 elderly black New Orleans residents about their voodoo experiences. Many of them recounted tales and workings of Marie Laveau. And when we were talking about Marie Laveau in her episode, remember we were super skeptical about how many ties she truly had to the voodoo community. Mm-hmm. But from doing my research on voodoo as a whole, I found a lot of the stories about Marie Laveau are from the families who, or from the elderly that they interviewed in this project.
Oh, okay.
So I thought that was pretty interesting, and I definitely wanted to make sure that I mentioned that.
Because we were led to believe originally that she was really Catholic, right?
Mm-hmm. So that was kind of like an assumption that I had made doing my research, is like maybe she had some ties to voodoo, or I felt like maybe she was kind of used as like a manipulation pawn in the mainstream media, which would have been newspapers like the New Orleans Times.
Yeah.
And stuff. But definitely going through and researching voodoo more in depth, I found a lot more that kind of tied her to that community as well.
Okay.
And also figuring out too that Christianity and Catholicism are kind of blended into voodoo and vodou. That also kind of helped me understand a little bit more about why I was like, because I'm like, what? This bitch is fucking Catholic as hell.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so during the civil rights movement in the 50s and the 60s, African American culture became integral to Louisiana heritage, leading to the emergence of the voodoo tourist industry. This era brought both positive effects and challenges for the voodoo faith, including commercialization and rumors. While there are genuine voodoo businesses around Louisiana, there are many eager opportunists that jumped at the chance to profit from this, and many storefronts and online sellers claiming to be selling voodoo material, they're actually frauds.
Oh.
A lot of fake commercialized stuff, which I've heard when people say they go to New Orleans, that's kind of how it is.
We did kind of talk about that. There's a lot of opportunists.
Yeah.
Remember? We talked about that.
Yeah. We'll talk a little bit more about Marie Laveau real quick.
Okay.
During the 19th century, it said that there were 15 voodoo queens in the French Quarter of New Orleans. Amongst them was Marie Laveau, who stands out as the most recognized and celebrated name. Frequently featured in newspapers, she garnered significant attention and respect both within the black and white communities. One of her most notable events was the religious rite she held on St. John's Eve at Lake Pontchartrain in 1874. Which attracted more than 12,000 people, which they talked about in the New Orleans Times article.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
She was of mixed race heritage, and that made her more palatable to the broader society.
Of course.
Further enhancing her prominence as a voodoo queen. But what I didn't know before was that she also played a crucial role in aiding runaway slaves. And according to the Journal of Louisiana Historical Association, many runaway slaves attributed their successful escapes to the magical charms that she provided herself. Her influence extended beyond the spiritual realm, and she offered practical assistance and hope to those seeking freedom from the bonds of slavery.
Wow.
I did not know that.
No.
But I thought that was pretty interesting. And I definitely wanted to mention it because that was something we didn't mention in the Marie Laveau episode.
Right.
So.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome for her.
Yeah, for sure.
Great.
Right? More recently in history, in 1972, a man named Charles Gandolfo, Gandalf?
Oh,
Gandolfo.
Yeah.
Established the New Orleans Historic Voodoo Museum as a tourist attraction. Around this time, some walking tours of the city would also stage voodoo rituals for paying onlookers, and an annual Voodoo Fest in Congo Square on Halloween featured vendors selling food and materials. They performed the public voodoo ceremonies, but these ceremonies were faked and sensationalized, and this obviously did not help to bolster the general public's outlook of the practice.
So this Gandalf guy,
Yeah.
like, he's just monopolizing on it.
Is what I kind of, I mean,
It didn't say,
I'm
like, he
sure
was
that
a-
the museum is great.
Was he
but
a practice? Was
I
he
have no
practicing
idea.
voodoo? No.
I have no idea if
Okay.
he was practicing, but I do know that he was tied to Voodoo Fest. Like, he
Okay.
was tied to that, so
Hmm.
I'm sure that it was maybe a mixture of both.
Right.
You know,
Yeah,
just a way to. It was a way that he could like make some money off of it.
yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to, you know,
Yeah.
if you see a business opportunity.
Yeah. I don't know.
Uh.
Yeah. In Vodou, we talked about the spirits a lot
Mhm.
and deities. So there's some similarities and some differences with Vodou and Voodoo. It is seen as like a monotheistic religion, but there's like a little bit of argument with that. So some of the most important deities that I was able to come across, the first one was Blanc Denis, and he is also known as Daniel Blanc or Monsieur Danny. The earliest records of Blanc Denis date back to 1880. This deity is closely tied to the Dan, also called Da, deity from Fan culture. And remember, the Fan
Fan,
people were
yeah.
from Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Are from Africa, not were. They're still
still-
around.
Yep.
So Blanc Denis is associated with the Saint Michael and also with Dambala of Haitian Vodou. He's the one that you were laughing your ass off because I said that like they put the white sheet over
the sheet. Damn it. Don't get me started on that sheet. Okay, I do
Yeah.
remember him, yes.
So he's the one, that he's supposed to kind of like reference.
I mean, that gave me a good laugh like the next day.
Oh, gosh,
I remember
I know.
texting you. And I was like, girl, I can't stop thinking about that. Okay, all right.
Yeah. So Blanc Denis' significance highlights the connections between voodoo and other African spiritual traditions. The other one, we talked about this guy a little bit when we did the Marie Laveau episode, Le Grand Zombie.
Yes.
Yeah, and remember we were kind of going back and forth. There was obviously a lot of like real zombie material that came up, but then we also found like the zombie thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so Haitian Vodou is where they have the zombie, Zonbi.
Which are modern day zombies is where that comes from.
Yes, exactly.
Mhm.
And then in Voodoo, Le Grand Zombie is actually a deity that is worshipped, is my understanding.
Okay.
He's believed to draw from Dambala and another Loa named Simbi. Okay, so Le Grand Zombie is often represented as a python, symbolizing his power and spiritual significance. Ensantier, associated with good fortune, Monsieur Agusu, associated with love, are also important deities in Voodoo. I couldn't really find much on them, just their names and like that brief significance.
Okay.
There's also Veriquite, which is a spirit known for causing illnesses. And then Sayamunga, called upon in Missouri when collecting mud. But very little is known about his specific associations.
When collecting mud,
Mm-hmm.
wait, you call upon them when you're collecting mud.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
I think it sounded to me like it may have been more in the past.
Like collecting mud to
So I'm
build
wondering,
huts?
that's what I was wondering.
Like
if it
as
was
building material?
yeah.
Okay. Maybe. Okay.
I'm not real sure. That's
Okay.
what it said on there.
The deity of construction, maybe? I don't know.
Maybe, but
Oh,
it seems like
'Cause
there's
why
a lot of
else-
secrecy around some of them.
oh, sure.
You know.
Yeah. But what other use would there be for mud? I'm just thinking like
I don't
a
know.
thatched roof, you would like mud
Yeah.
it in with
The only
like
thing,
hay
like
and
the
straw.
first thing that comes to my mind is constructing.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, constructing.
Yeah.
Or maybe like a spa day, you know, where you
Could
do
be.
like a mud bath.
Yeah, that
Maybe that's like a
possibly.
ritual as well.
yeah. I don't know.
Hmm.
So obviously, I mentioned the Loa before. So in Voodoo, they do venerate to the Loa, just as they do in Vodou. They are separated into nanchans or nations with distinct characteristics. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
The Glassman Temple in New Orleans, for example, has two separate altars set up, one for the Rada Loa and another for the Petwo Loa. So in both voodoo and vodou. Those are the two main nations of Loa.
Okay.
And each are adorned with different colors, numbers, foods, and drinks for the associations. During the 1930s and 40s, those interviews with the elderly of New Orleans revealed that in the last 3 decades of the 1800s, voodoo primarily involved calling upon the saints for assistance. One of the most popular saints that they would call upon was Saint Anthony of Padua, also known as the patron saint of the Congo. I think it's Padua.
Okay.
Because it's Padua. Saint Anthony of Padua.
So it's a saint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was saying, like, in the last 3 decades, that was primarily what voodoo practice was just venerating to the saints.
Okay.
Barbara Marie Osby, who is a native of New Orleans and a 21st century practitioner of voodoo, has written about voodoo in the Southern Literary Journey, which I'm going to read some for you here.
Okay.
In her article, Why We Can't Talk to You About Voodoo, Osby argues that the saints are simply servants and messengers for the ancestors. She emphasizes that the saints retain their distinct identities rather than being equated to specific West African deities. Osby also describes the belief in one distant but single deity, aligning with other scholars' descriptions of voodoo as a monotheistic religion. You remember in Vodou they had Bandi as their god, and then the Loa were servants of God and spirits.
So the Catholic religion has saints.
Mm-hmm.
Just like normal, sorry that I say normal, but like just like a Christian, like Lutheran, do they worship saints as well?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yep.
So, okay.
Yeah, I know for sure Lutheran does.
I know for sure Catholic does.
I know Catholic does. I'm pretty sure most Christians, most Christian denominations.
Are the saints different from the people that wrote the sections of the Bible?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. So if there's like a Saint Peter, is it
Saint
really
Patrick?
Is there a Peter that wrote a section of the Bible?
I don't know.
Oh, okay.
That I do not know.
Okay.
Oh yeah, but I wanted to read Osby's, I think it's like a poem.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this is Why We Can't Talk to You About Voodoo by Brenda Marie Osby, who is a practicing voodooist today from New Orleans.
Like present day?
Present
She's
day.
Still practicing.
So this was written in the Southern Literary Journal in March of 2011.
Okay, that's pretty recent.
Pretty recent, right?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. And I'm not sure if this was just a preview of the full article, but I just thought it was kind of interesting, so I definitely wanted to read it.
Okay.
So it says, "We, who are natives of this city and count ourselves amongst the faithful, cannot talk with you, the outsider, about voodoo. And that is unfortunate, because in this highly complex, deceptively simple set of principles, beliefs, and what have you, is much that could heal you of whatever it is in your life that needs healing. Could heal your whole life, probably, because that's what it really is all about, your whole life. Not you personally, of course, but how the wholeness anyone and everyone should have can be restored, can restore one to oneself. But the very fact that you come asking after it means that you will never possess it, at least not in this lifetime, and certainly not from anything you might learn here. And besides, we honestly cannot talk with you about it anyhow. You, of course, will tell us about the books you have read and the research you have done, none of which has anything to do with us or our beliefs. We will smile sympathetically, as we always do at such defenses, which we recognize as the pleas for belonging that they are. Or perhaps you are a modern-day Latin, by which we mean that you are descended not from our oppressors of past centuries, but from the same oppression wreaked through the islands and inlands of what we now call Latin America. In other words, a cousin of sorts. In which case you will go on about Santeria, which you will not call by its name, Santeria, but in hushed tones, the saints, as if the Pope might have his spies nearby, as if the Pope's spies had nothing better to do than loll about eavesdropping over iced coffees in New Orleans. You will go on about it and about our love for Africa, or about your love for Africa, but what we will notice is your affection for all things European as well, and how you use that word, European, as an adjective for all that is good, not only about our city, but about yourselves. You drop it like a compliment without warning. We notice that although you come from raceless, classless worlds just next door to us, you will go on at length about color and texture and shapes of skin and hair and lips and noses. We will note with not a little shame the specific physical transformations you have foisted upon yourselves and freely recommended to us. By the time you return to the saints, in other words, we will have begun to wonder if the Pope's spies might not be needing their coffees topped. Perhaps, for the sake of good manners, we ought to invite them in to join us at the club this evening to hear our favorite bassist and his new trio. And she puts that in like quotations. You will notice our attention waning and become defensive. In another age, we would say, why not? You will attempt to lure us with comparisons. The drums! Your young voice rises now. Where are the drums? In Congo Square, we might offer, every Sunday for the last few centuries. But we have heard all this before, and so we will offer more coffee, water, rum, sweets perhaps, anything to take the edge off of your confusion, and shut the door on that endless yammering. None of this, of course, will satisfy you. Still, we will do whatever we can to put you at ease. You are, after all, a not-too-distant relation, and we feel for your discomfort. In the end, however, we will tell you nothing you care to hear. You will leave perhaps a little triumphant, but in a matter of hours, perhaps a day or two, some disease will come over you, and you will seek us out again. You will be calmer, but no less unhappy. And we are sorry, truly sorry for your distress, but we cannot help. We really cannot talk to you about it. Perhaps you should finally go home. And indeed, wouldn't that be the very best thing for you, all of you, no matter who you are and how distantly or not so distantly related you might prove? Wouldn't it be better all around if you just turned around and went back home? We, for our part, would be quite content to see you go. We would like to imagine you, from time to time, lodged in some place as completely your own as this is ours.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was a lot, isn't it?
It's a lot. So when she says go back home, what do you think she means? Is she talking about tourists that are just there for the novelty of it?
I think that's a part of it, but like the way that this reads is two people having a conversation. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the way she's like, would you like more coffee, rum, anything sweet? So I think it's more like, all right, now get the fuck out of my house. Like, you're not going to get the information out of me that you came here to get, you know?
Okay. That's why I'm picturing the conversation as, like, someone is a customer in this coffee shop and she's the server.
Right. Or something like that, yeah.
That's what I was picturing, and then that's why she's like, go back where you came from. Like, you're not going to infiltrate us. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But, like, this, to me, really, like, explained a lot about why I kept hitting walls when it would come to research.
Sure.
And I didn't really have that with Voodoo. Like, it is a secretive religion, but there was a lot more out there that was available.
Or
Voodoo.
Okay.
You know, but with Voodoo, first of all, it's literally a religion that changes from group to group within Louisiana. They all have their own different ideas of what Voodoo is and what it means to them.
Right.
So that makes it a little bit more difficult, too. But, like, reading this, I was like, dang, like, this bitch ain't fucking around.
Right? Yeah. I know. I was thinking that, too. I was like, wow.
Like, she does not want to tell. And I understand it, especially, like, from the aspect of, like, she lives down there.
Well.
And if she's got these tourists always, like, coming to her group and trying to, like, infiltrate it and get their hands on the secrets. Like,
and that's what it is. Their intentions aren't pure and real. And she sees that. They're just trying to get information. They're not really appreciating what the voodoo does and can do for you.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
wow. That's a cool find, that article.
For sure. So let's talk about some practices and traditions. Voodoo practices place significant importance on respecting and caring for the elders, which we saw in Voodoo as well. The spirits of the dead are revered as much as in Voodoo. and communicating with ancestors is an essential part of voodoo practice. Ancestral spirits can be invoked during ceremonies, emphasizing the connection between the living and the deceased. Many historical rituals involve snakes. It is said that Marie Laveau would frequently be accompanied at rituals with a snake, which we did kind of see.
Mm-hmm. Didn't we look at pictures of her with like a snake?
We saw
or something?
like some artwork.
Okay,
was
maybe it was
depicted
artwork
with her.
Okay,
You know, she was depicted with snakes.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that like they have snake dances.
Yes.
And actually that practice declined towards the end of the 19th century, but some practitioners do continue to like incorporate snake dances.
Okay.
I almost said snork dances.
Snork dances.
So we talked about this before, but the tradition of voodoo is matriarchal, with women and priestess playing the dominant role.
Right.
There's a feminist theorist named Tara Green, and she defines the term voodoo feminism to describe instances where African American women draw upon both Louisiana voodoo and conjuring to combat racial and gender oppression that they experience. And this kind of highlights the empowering role voodoo played for African American women.
Okay.
The New Orleans Voodoo Spiritual Temple was established by Miriam and Oswan Chamonix, I believe that's how you say it, Chamonix, in 1990. So this is the only formally established voodoo temple in Louisiana.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Its mission statement, I went and looked at the website a little bit and kind of looked around. So their mission statement is to provide service that meets the needs of all mankind, which allows him or her to fulfill their quest to the divine plan of the universe.
Oh,
Yeah.
so it's a real practicing temple.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep. Altars. So those are similar to what we saw in Vodou, like I said before. There's statues of the saints and then food and drink offerings. At temples, the altars are arranged around the potomatan, which is the central post of the temple. But then in personal altars, you can usually find them in somebody's kitchen or living room, and they serve as conduits for communication with ancestors. And there's often food and drink offerings. Rituals. They do have rituals. They're pretty similar to the Vodou rituals with possession. So there's 4 distinct phrases, though, of the rituals in voodoo, and that's preparation, invocation, possession, and farewell. Each phase has its own song, which opens the gates between the spirit and the human realms and invites the spirit to possess somebody. The possessed practitioner is called the horse, and they offer blessings and healing.
Right, because they willingly, like they want to be possessed, right?
Yep.
Okay. I do remember this coming back to me.
Yeah. So sometimes the ceremonies begin with reciting the Apostles' Creed or prayers to the Virgin Mary.
Which is another Catholic thing, right?
Yeah. I think the Apostles' Creed is specifically Catholic, but I'm not,
is it?
I'm
I
not
don't know
positive.
Okay, yeah, I don't know.
I'm not positive on that, and I'm not going to Google it.
Right, yeah. I mean, I could, but I don't want to.
Yeah. So, animal sacrifice. We talked about it with Vodou and how it's sometimes more humane than even manufacturing of meat here.
Sure.
Mass meat production. So it's a reoccurring element in historical practice, but it has declined in the 21st century. Some practitioners still participate in it, but it's not considered universal. And actually, Sally Ann Glassman, who is another current voodoo practitioner, she forbids the practice within her group.
Okay. Well, makes sense.
Yeah. There's also obviously rumors of human sacrifice, always with everything.
Mm-hmm.
But they're unfounded and likely stem from fear-mongering. I didn't find anything that was like, this is 150% connected to voodoo. You know, lots of speculation. So during these ceremonies, the practitioners will dance around the potomatan and use veves, which is the patterns that they would draw. You remember those? Veve? Yeah.
Yeah.
They would draw them on the ground primarily, I think.
Yeah.
Or I think they are sometimes on like the flags and stuff. Drapos are patterned flags. Those are brought out and songs are sung in Haitian Creole usually. Mardi Gras.
Yeah.
Voodoo and Mardi Gras are interconnected in various ways. Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday, is a pre-Lenten festival celebrated with parades, music, costumes, and revelry. It is rooted in Catholic tradition, but over time, it has absorbed other cultural influences, including voodoo.
Mm-hmm.
Voodoo, with its deep historical ties to African spiritual practices, has definitely left its mark on Mardi Gras through symbolism, rituals, and special celebrations. One of the most notable connections is the incorporation of voodoo symbols and imagery in Mardi Gras parades and costumes. For example, some parade floats and masks feature veves. Voodoo themes can be seen in the vibrant and elaborate costumes worn by participants, reflecting the mystical and spiritual aspects of the religion. There's also the idea of rara bands, which we touched on, and that's, I mean, to me, that's what I always kind of thought of as Mardi Gras, like just a giant
party
going through the street.
I mean, that's everything I think of.
Right. So, hoodoo. It is related to voodoo, but it is more primarily found along like the Mississippi River. And it's also more rooted around herbal practices, charms, and spells. There's not like, I guess, major reference to many deities, like specific ones. Hoodoo practice displays greater influences of Roman Catholicism than voodoo.
All right, well, let's get down to business here.
Let's get back to it.
Okay.
All right.
So
we were
ready.
Talking about hoodoo. Mm-hmm. We already said that hoodoo has greater influences of Roman Catholicism than voodoo. And then specialists within hoodoo are referred to as doctors or workers. They often work out of their homes or small shops, providing powders, materials, oils, and incense made from natural ingredients. Hoodoo doctors and normal doctors in Louisiana do not hold that mutual respect for one another. Remember in Voodoo, the Voodoo doctors and medical practitioners would often refer people to each other and say, this is outside of my realm, go see a real doctor kind of thing. Right. Yeah, that's not how it really is with hoodoo, which is not really surprising because the healthcare system in America has historically resented any form of healthcare that is not sanctioned by a licensed medical professional. Oh, well, yeah, it's not like Blue Cross Blue Shield is going to cover a visit at the voodoo shop. Uh-huh. Yeah. $20 copay gets you a voodoo doll. Yeah. So, I don't know. I read this book recently about the beginnings of the American licensed medical professionals and, how it would kind of started with, a war on female healers within communities. Right. Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all. I haven't finished reading the book yet, but, of course, because you're probably reading 8 other books. I am. I sure am. But it was something I thought was interesting and, made me think about the creation of the healthcare system a little bit differently. So we might cover it. Differently in a good sense or a bad sense? A bad sense. Oh, okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I always knew the American healthcare system was absolute It's a fucking
trash.
Joke. Yeah.
It's a joke. Every country realizes the American healthcare system is a joke. Yeah. It's more based on, greed than actual medical and scientific knowledge. It's run by the pharmaceutical companies. Right. So that's kind of the issue that I have with it. Yeah. Oh, big pharma. Big pharma. Gilead. Yeah. Okay. All right. So voodoo dolls. Okay. Obviously, we all know they've had a pretty nuanced role within voodoo religion, but contrary to popular belief, voodoo dolls are not only used for causing harm and casting curses. They can be, but that's not their main purpose. Oh. Instead, practitioners create these dolls to represent individuals, channeling spiritual energy and intentions through them. They can use pins, herbs, and other materials and attach it to the dolls to symbolize specific desires or requests. So the use of voodoo dolls is rooted in the broader practice of sympathetic magic. Now, sympathetic magic is where an object representing a person can influence their well-being. It is essential to recognize that the portrayal of voodoo dolls in media often distorts their true cultural and spiritual significance. Voodoo dolls can serve a variety of purposes within the religion beyond the common misconception. So here are some that I just wanted to quickly go over. Okay. Voodoo dolls can be used for healing, to promote health and recovery for the person represented by the doll. It's often done through attaching herbs and items that symbolize wellness. Okay. Another one is protection.
To safeguard an individual from harm and negative influences, they use the doll as a talisman. Then there is spiritual connection. You can use it to communicate with ancestral spirits or deities by channeling spiritual energy through the doll. Another one is love and relationships. It can attract love, strengthen relationships, or resolve conflicts with specific charms or symbols attached to the doll. That's kind of interesting. Like if you're having like a tiff in your marriage or something, just get some voodoo dolls and tie them together and make them love each other.
Yeah, that's what you're doing, all right.
Yeah. Oh, God. Another way that they can be used is for success and prosperity. To bring good fortune, success in endeavors, or financial prosperity, often with associated symbols or tokens, like attached to the doll. And then justice and revenge. While it's less common, some people may use voodoo dolls to seek justice or retribution against someone who has wronged them by channeling their intent.
And that's most commonly what we know.
That's what we know the most of.
Yeah.
And it seems like it's possibly the least, like, used route.
Oh, okay.
You know? So I think healing is probably the most common.
Healing is probably the most common within the voodoo religion.
Yeah.
But along white people, it's definitely for revenge.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So each of these different ways that it can be used are obviously rooted in the practitioner's intentions and belief. And the dolls serve as a physical representation of their desires or spiritual practice. And that's pretty much it on the voodoo dolls.
Okay.
So then I just kind of wanted to like go over some of the cultural and social impacts of the voodoo religion.
Okay, great.
So demographics. Today, some practitioners were born into voodoo, and other times practitioners have come to find the religion on their own. White members are a minority, but they're not unheard of.
Right.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
we saw all those women.
Right.
Fucking, what did he say? What did that one cop say? Something about like naked.
Yeah, I'm just picturing a bunch of chicks
A bunch
like
of naked
running
bitches
naked.
just scattering.
Yeah, just scattering.
Yeah.
Like, fuck, the cops are here, just running.
Right. Yes, they're not unheard of, but there are some groups that feel like white practitioners cannot be considered real practitioners because they do not descend from the African ancestral spirit that the groups venerate. But there are many groups, both in voodoo and vodou, that argue the opposite. Remember we talked about that Vice News clip I found with Mambo de Souza from Africa?
Mm-hmm.
So the group's leader, and he's a black male, his name is wild. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce it. But they call him the Supreme Chief of Voodoo.
Okay.
The Supreme from the Coven.
Right.
So he says that black people are not the only children of voodoo. He says that voodoo is everywhere in the world and is reflected in other religions around the world as well. He promotes the mindset that all humans are children of voodoo. He says voodoo is grounded in the 4 elements of nature, and that his primary objective in life is to ensure that he and others within the faith pray for the whole world, not just those close to them. He said that the goal is to bring peace to every region in Africa.
Okay.
So yeah, definitely some difference in opinions there. Voodoo has been depicted negatively in media and popular culture, linking it to witchcraft and devil worship. There are films like Angel Heart that came out in 1987. Have you ever seen that one?
No.
I've never seen that one either. There's also The Skeleton Key that came out in 2004.
That's such a good movie.
It's such a good movie.
It is.
And then The Princess and the Frog from 2009.
That's a Disney movie, right?
It's a Disney movie.
Yeah.
And then the obviously American Horror Story Coven, where they talk about Marie Laveau.
Mm-hmm.
They've all contributed to both stereotypes and awareness of voodoo. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword.
Right.
I read a couple things like about the Skeleton Key in general.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, they do kind of depict voodoo in a pretty negative fashion, like throughout the book. But from everything I heard, it also was kind of a tipping point as far as raising awareness and changing people's
Okay.
Yeah. So
that is a great movie.
it is a pretty good one.
Mm-hmm.
What's Kate
Hudson.
That's her name. Okay.
Yeah.
Voodoo also had impacts on cultural preservation and revival. The civil rights movement marked a period where African American culture, including voodoo, was recognized as an integral part of Louisiana heritage. Practitioners like Ava K. Jones and Sally Ann Glassman work to promote understanding and preservation of voodoo traditions today.
Okay.
So as far as community and identity, voodoo provides a sense of community and cultural identity for its practitioners. Festivals like St. John's Eve and All Saints' Day are important cultural events that strengthen communal bonds. I thought this was pretty interesting. Ava K. Jones, the lady that we were just talking about, in 2001, she performed a ritual to drive away harmful forces from the New Orleans Saints football team in an attempt to improve their performance.
Really?
Yeah.
All right.
The sense of community and collective collaboration inherent in both voodoo and Mardi Gras fosters a shared cultural identity amongst the people of New Orleans. Education and awareness. We did see in the 21st century things shifted, and it was, voodoo was gaining some recognition as a formal religion and tradition.
Oh, all right.
Efforts to document the study of voodoo, such as the Louisiana Writers Project that we read about, or we talked about.
I didn't read nothing.
Efforts to document and study voodoo, such as the Louisiana Writers Project, have helped increase awareness and understanding of the tradition. There's scholarly works and articles by practitioners like Barbara Marie Osby that provide insight into the beliefs and practices of voodoo. But still, they face ongoing challenges due to misconceptions and stereotypes, often fueled by fear and misinformation. Efforts to correct these misunderstandings are crucial for the accurate representation of voodoo in society, which I agree with, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Ava K. Jones, so she is a Creole woman, and she was initiated both into Haitian Voodoo and Orisha Voodoo, which is a U.S.-based derivative of Santeria.
Okay.
I don't know much about Santeria, besides the song.
I was going to say, do you want to sing it again? No.
Yeah, we did do that last time, didn't we? And Orisha Voodoo, I've never heard of that term either.
No, I've
that
never
was a
heard
new
of it.
one for me. But she practices today, and she talks about leading a group through voodoo revival, as opposed to the 18th and 19th century traditional groups.
Okay, so she's got a revival.
Yeah,
huh?
she does it a little differently. She describes her traditions as being more faithful to Haitian Voodoo and Santeria than the original concept of Louisiana Voodoo.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
In her group, they actually seek to promote understanding of their religion through building relationships both online and through editorials and workshops.
Oh, so she's more open.
She's more open to speaking with people publicly about it sounds, than Brenda Marie Osby. I mean, to each their own,
Yeah, for sure.
So, Louisiana Voodoo is a rich and complex tradition that has evolved over centuries. It blends African, Christian, and Indigenous influences. It stands as a testament to the resilience and adaptability of African slaves who preserved and transformed their spiritual practices despite immense hardships. This tradition has permeated various aspects of life in Louisiana, from the sacred rituals and ceremonies to the everyday practices. While often misunderstood and misrepresented, Louisiana Voodoo remains a vibrant and significant part of the cultural tapestry of New Orleans and beyond. Its practitioners continue to honor the spirits, heal the sick, and protect their communities, maintaining a deep connection to their ancestors and the divine. The commercial interests and the popular cultural depictions of voodoo have brought both challenges and opportunities, but the essence of this spiritual practice remains rooted in its core values and traditions. Understanding Louisiana voodoo requires an appreciation of its historical context, the diversity of its practices, and the strength of its community. By delving into this fascinating and multifaceted religion, we're gaining insight into the enduring spirit of resilience and the profound cultural heritage that continues to shape the lives of many today.
Wow.
And that was my ending.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Cut.
Woo! Bravo. Bravo. So I'm trying to think of where was it where they had the presidents that would
Haiti.
that was Haiti. Okay.
Yeah.
I was trying to think where their leadership continually they would be like 6 months and then they'd be booted out and someone else came in.
assassinated or executed.
Yeah. I was like, where? Because I remember it came in with this conversation somehow. And I'm like, where was that at? I couldn't remember if it was community leaders in New Orleans but it was Haiti.
It was Haiti, because things in Haiti have been in like a constant state of turmoil.
Which they still are.
I actually just saw an article about Haiti and how like tensions are hot there with the current leader, which I can't remember what his name was, but
don't worry, he won't last long.
Yeah, for real. I think he's already like 4 years in, so they're due for an assassination. That's fucked up to say.
It is fucked up. I was just thinking that, but it's too late. You already said it.
I already said it.
But
I mean, don't get me wrong. I did really enjoy looking into all this, but like it's gonna be a while before I pick up another topic this large. Like,
it's a lot of research.
It's a lot. It was fun.
Yeah.
But I'm ready to talk about something else. All right, well.
Yeah.
That's all I got for y'all. We got to go to Quick Trip.
Yep. Oh, yeah, there. All right. Well, thank you for listening.
Yep. We will see you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you have any topic suggestions, please feel free to share them with us at hexhavenpodcast@gmail.com. And if you'd like more Hexhaven content before our next episode releases, please check out our Patreon.
This episode of Hexhaven was recorded at the K-Town Connects podcast studio. Thanks for listening.